Do you struggle with building wealth? Do you struggle with taking control of your money? The basic things of life that many of us struggle with. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I strongly believe that this is related to your view and the sort of psychological processes that you deal with the world. I have done, I do this a lot in terms of thinking through what it means to build wealth and how does this actually work out. And I'm going to be the first one, and this is part of me sort of dealing with the challenges of the psychology of all of this, is that I am going to tell you right up front, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you right up front that it's a lot more challenging than you think it is. And I'm going to tell you right up front that it's going to take you decades, not a few weeks or a few months, to be able to do this. And that's where the psychology comes into it all. It's like everything else in life, whether it's losing weight, whether it is working out, any number of different things. The psychology is always, or what people always expect and what they want. And I think there's nothing wrong with this, right? Is what I'm telling you. It's just human behavior, what we do as human beings. And I do the same thing. And I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about how I handle things. Is that I want to get someplace extremely quickly, right? It's imagined in my head. And if it's imagined in your head, you kind of understand what it looks like. You kind of feel it at this given moment. You really want it at this moment, right? It makes no sense to push something out. But um, much of human society, much of the world, much of of just how the world, the universe actually works, the time of getting it within a day, within a week, within a year, even a decade, that's too short of what's called a time scale, right? So time scales are sort of things that the time that things operate on, right? So for a organism like a cell, for example, a week is a long time, right? If you're looking at it, that's a fairly long time. They're probably going to go through several cells that grow and die. But if you were to look at it from universe time, like a week or 1,000 years is a blip. It's just a tiny little thing. For human beings, um, you know, if you wait 30 years, that's a third of your life. Maybe if you're, as we get older, it might be a little longer for some of us. But, that's a big chunk of time. And so the decisions that we make in the short term, how we build wealth in the short term, um, often is far different. It feels far different. It requires you to do such different things than it does for something that you need within a day, within five years, within a decade. It's a different ball game, and I see this all the time in terms of even within the academic game, even with what professors do is they do these sprints that are really hard, and they're working really hard to get tenure, and then they get tenure and then that's it, right? Like that's the end of it, instead of viewing it as, hey, this is a long run game, we have to change this. And maybe that's the intention, is to get people to work extremely hard in a short period of time, and then that's like you kind of let them sort of die out, that resource die out. But I don't think that's the intention. And I don't think how lots of people do this want to do that. I don't think that that is a healthy thing. And so what can you do to change this? What's the psychology of it? It's super basic. Nothing about this in terms of building wealth, in terms of doing things that are good in your life, I mean, I've said it so many times on this podcast. It's like super basic. It's the things that your grandparents tell you. Um, and maybe the reason why they tell you that is because they have perspective and they look back and they're like, well, that actually wasn't that long. 30 years was not that long in my life. And I should have done that because it would have been an extraordinary life. Um, you know, for example, you might want to be the top in a particular area, or um, you want to make an extraordinary amount of money in a shortened period. All of these kind of things are very, very short run. If you take a step back and you think, how do I do this? Such it's a long run thing that I'm actually doing, and it's going to take an extraordinarily long time, not get there in a matter of a couple of years, but let's figure out how I'm going to get there and do successful over the course of 30 years. That is a far different game. I know how to do that in terms of, building wealth in your life. The recipe is super easy, and and it seems like kind of duh, right? The recipe is always take some arbitrary number, right? So 10 to 15, 10 to 20% of everything that you make, right? So for me, it's 15%, which falls very close to all of the Dave Ramsey stuff, right? If you've listened to what he does, um, it's very similar in terms of what they do, or the Susie Ormans, these sort of characters that you hear. It's all the basic same stuff. Is take 10%, take 15%. I do 15%. We probably do a little more. Realistically, it's probably more like 20 in any given year. Um, Take that amount of everything that you're going to make and reinvest it in um, long-term stocks and bonds and things that have good returns that have been around forever. I put a lot in index funds. You know, all of those seem like big words. All of those are really scary, but all it is you're taking money from yourself that has a potential of, you know, not doing well over the 30 years period, right? You're an asset in of itself, resource in of itself that could just not work, right? And that's what you need to sort of think about. What are the possibilities of you not working? And there's lots. And then you reinvest it in things that potentially could work for a long time. And you don't know what those things are, so I don't even guess. I don't even care, and don't do any of that stuff. And I just say, hey, let's think about the long term, invest in things, and all of the good companies that we know, right? All the big good companies that we know don't know, and then we just let it sit and let them do their thing, right? Like they're good companies, they're well managed, they know what they're doing. Why not invest in them? They're assets that everybody understands. Why not invest in them? Um, so the challenging thing is that game is really different than what you're used to. There's no strategery, there's no strategy, there's no how can I get ahead in the short term. There's nothing like that. It is a slow, painful, boring walk of just trying to live a good life, right? Of getting up, doing the basic things that you need to do, get exercise, hug your family, whatever, all that kind of stuff, the sort of basic stuff that we know, have some holidays with Thanksgivings and all of that kind of stuff, like the basic stuff that we all know, but you have to live like almost a to in the short term, it's a very prudent life, right? Like it feels or people view it as prudent. In the long term, it's really not. It's a very luxurious life. Um, I've my family has done it long enough. We've sort of passed the hump of where it feels austere or it feels like I'm living like the 18th century, and It's a very luxurious life now because you can do whatever the hell you actually want, right? Like I think Dave Ramsey has this great saying where it is you live you live like nobody else so you can live like nobody else, right? This is sort of basic thing where you kind of live a little austere, it's a little tight for a relatively short period of time, or it feels like that, right? And short period might be 5, 10 years, maybe even 20 years if you're a PhD, I understand. Um, and you do that for that short amount of period. In your lifespan, it is a short amount of period. It's a short time, right? Like if you think about it in proportion, coming back to time scales, it's really not that long. um, it feels long because your time scale is very short, right? You're looking very short. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, how long you're actually going to live, that's like, that's 80% of your life that you're going to have to live off of this particular thing, and you're going to be doing okay. Um, so, everything is like this, right? You see, once you start seeing life in terms of this short run, long run thing, you start like, oh, okay. People want to race into getting married, right? Or they race into exercise is a big one. Some reason, um, you know, the reason why I'm talking about this is I saw somebody that I love dearly, hobbling around because, they hurt themselves in the gym many years ago because they were trying to get to someplace much quicker than the sort of exercise allowed them to get to. And it's I'm not going to throw any exercise program under the bridge, but it rhymes with um, it rhymes with Oxfit. Um, so like these things that are intentionally designed to get you really quickly to some place often are high risk, high return. And what that means, if I say high risk, high return, you don't process it, right? It's actually um, potential of you having catastrophic failure is very high. And if I say that, you process it. So anytime that you do something that is trying to get you someplace really quick to someplace, your potential of catastrophic failure extremely high, right? If you rush into a marriage, your potential of catastrophic failure extremely high. You rush into doing exercises and you start putting on too much weight too quickly, and you do things that are too aggressive. Your potential of catastrophic failure is very high. So I want you to sort of view life in terms of this way, right? Of thinking about your potential of catastrophic failure is very high in anything that you're rushing towards. Let's take a step back. How are we going to get there in a long-term plan, right? So a better plan for building wealth, extremely long time, 30 years, better plan for, exercise, to think like figuring out what the hell are you like lifting a bunch of heavy weights in the first place? Like, what's that going to do for you, right? Like, that's not human life. Think about what you actually need, go 20% beyond what you actually need, 30% beyond what you need, and sort of go there, right? So human beings probably should not be lifting. A normal human being probably should be not lifting over 100 pounds, right? Like, what the hell are you going to do that for? But if you do that to build a nice and healthy life so that you can function and do okay, your potential of catastrophic failure is much lower. And you work your way up to it, um, is much lower, and you're going to have a much longer and healthier life by doing those kind of things. And I want you to sort of think about that. Like, what does all of this mean in terms of what we are doing, and start processing it and thinking about it. And you know what? All of a sudden things start clicking. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.